water, adults only, slippery when wet. What if you couldn't read life's basic directions? That's what happened to Arnie Stewart, because for most of his life, he couldn't read or write. He was one of about 3 million adult Canadians who lack the basic skills to fill in simple forms, understand labels, even read notes from their children's teachers. His illiteracy didn't just hold him back in life, it almost killed him. Tonight, Arnie Stewart, no longer afraid of words, from person to person.
Arnie, Arnie, stupid, stupid Arnie, Arnie, Arnie.
Arnie Stewart remembers school as a terrifying and humiliating experience. As a child, he never deciphered the mystery of basic reading and writing. He spent most of his childhood at the back of the class, forgotten. Born in 1946, Stewart was one of 12 children. He grew up in extreme poverty in the northern Ontario mining town of Cobalt. The silver mines were drying up, and his father couldn't find steady work. Stewart and his siblings often went to school hungry. But it wasn't just an empty stomach that made it difficult for him to learn. On his way to school, Arnie had to walk past the house of a child molester. Later in our interview, Arnie Stewart will tell you how he finally stared down that demon. When he was kicked out of school at age 15, Stewart had only made it through grade 4, and still he couldn't read or write. At 16, Stewart hitchhiked to Niagara Falls, hoping either to enlist in the U.S. Army or to pick oranges in Florida, but he was turned away by U.S. border guards. With no money in his pocket and nothing to eat, it would have been easy for Stewart to turn to crime. Instead, he managed to find work laying sod for the Niagara Bridge Commission. He also found love with a local girl, Barbara. They've been married for 36 years and raised 2 children, Nicole and Alan. Stewart was promoted from maintenance work with the Bridge Commission to his current position in security. But he had to spend huge amounts of time concocting elaborate schemes to stop his co-workers from discovering the truth. For most of his adult life, he thought of his illiteracy as a dirty little secret. But then one day, when he was in his 40s, Arnie Stewart discovered one-on-one tutoring. Slowly, very slowly, words began to make sense to him.
I have the rigatoni and meatballs, please.
Okay.
Thanks, ma'am.
Today, he can walk into his favorite restaurant and read out his order. He doesn't have to pretend to co-workers anymore. He really is reading and writing. Arnie Stewart is truly a poster boy for the literacy movement.
I'm going to come.
He spends much of his free time talking to students and prisoners about literacy. I spoke with Arnie Stewart at his home in Niagara Falls. Arnie, what was it about your childhood, do you think, that set you up for having trouble with reading?
As much far as back I could go, I think a lot of it is poverty. Having hard times when there's no jobs and when we're growing up as little kids and that, you just don't have enough to eat half the time. I think that was a big part of it. I can remember when I was in school and grade 1 for 3 years, grade 2 for 3 years, grade 3, and I can always remember putting my hand up and ask the teacher if I can go to the washroom. It was the reason why I didn't have to go to the washroom, but the kids all kept our lunch pails out in the hall. So I used to go out and I used to steal a cookie out of this one, something else out of that one, just about every day. I don't know if the kids ever knew it, but that's survival when you're in school, when you're hungry. And I think that was one of the big problems.
Why were you so hungry?
Well, my mom and dad, they tried real hard to make a go of it, but a lot of times, like my dad wouldn't take welfare. He was too proud. And we went and we caught fish or a rabbit. And many times we ran home, my mother had baked bread for us and homemade beans, but there was just never enough to eat in the family.
12 kids?
12 kids, 12 brothers and sisters. And my daddy and mom looked after another couple that didn't have much more.
Did you eat every day at home?
Just about every day at home, yeah. There was some times where we went 3 or 4 days with nothing. It was hard times. I can remember my dad taking my sister and myself, and we had a toboggan. It was in the wintertime, and we went down to this store called the Red and White in Cobalt. And my dad says, come on. He took us down and parked the toboggan outside, and we went inside and grabbed some boxes, and we kept throwing all this food in. Marshmallows, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, well, geez, you know, my sister, we must have won the area sweepstake or something. So we come up, and the lady there, Mrs. Leeper, I can remember her name, and she's writing stuff on the till, banging it in, and then she's waiting for my dad to pay. And my dad, she said, Mr. Stewart, you don't have a credit account here. She said, you got to pay. And my dad said, look, my kids are starving. I need food for them. Call the police if you have to. And we drove that toboggan home. We lived up in the bush, sort of. And about, I don't know, 7, 8 hours go by or whatever, and the 2 police come up. I still know their names. Pat Shan and Kurt LeBaron come to the house. They knocked on the door, and they opened it up, and we're 7 or 8 of us all standing around with food because we never ate in a long time. And they said, oh, Mr. Stewart, we have to take you downtown to the police station. And you know, and he said to him, you know, you shouldn't do that. He said, you know, there's welfare. And that's when he yelled and screamed. He goes, I am not going on welfare. I am not. I just want a job. And then I can remember, he said, well, you got to come with us. And all of us kids, I could remember it like it was yesterday. We're hanging on to my dad's pants saying, please, no. And I remember the police saying, oh, that's okay, Mr. Stewart. You come on downtown tomorrow. Well, you know where the police station is. Times like that. There's times like that where you just hard to understand, you know, where these things happen.
What happened when your dad went to the police station? Do you know?
Actually, they got him a job. They got him a job at the Temagami mines in Cobalt. Or in Temagami. It was a copper mine. And he got a job and worked there for 7 or 8 years, I remember. And brought home food and brought home everything. And
so that's why you remember
family.
The names of the police officers.
Yeah, I can remember because everybody sort of looked after everybody in them days, tried to help. There was people with less food than us to eat. I think a big problem of mine was, too, I had to walk about 3 miles to get to school. And we had a pedophile on the way walking to school. And I had to go around his house all the time, like a half a mile to stay away. And when you're in school, like he always says, oh, you tell him I'm going to kill your mother and father. And I was really scared at school, going home, going there. And I couldn't learn in school that way. And
how old were you when you realized there was a pedophile near the school?
Well, I was about 7 and 8 years old when he grabbed the hold of me, and you know, and I was always scared.
Did he take you into his home?
In a barn where they had horses, and had threatened me there that I had to do things to him, you know. And I always, you know, cried, you know, but I couldn't tell anybody because right away, if you tell anybody, you know, he was going to kill your mother and father. And I just never told anybody. I tried to keep that inside. I'm not saying that's an excuse to, you know, not to be able to read and write.
But Arnie, I think it's okay if you're 7 or 8 years old and an adult is doing something really horrible to you, to admit that and to feel bad about it. I mean, that's an incredibly tough thing for even an adult to handle, let alone a little kid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I try to tell people older than me now, because a lot of people out there tell me what happened to them. And they feel sick, and they should feel sick about it and everything. And I just try to tell them, well, just go on with your life, you know. Like that guy that did that to me, finally, it took 20, 25 years, 30 years to get caught, because I finally went to the police because he was working in the school as a janitor. And I went to the police, and they didn't believe me or couldn't do too much about it. And then about 7 years ago, some little girl phoned me up. She was about 25 years old and said, you know, we looked all over for you because we were molested since we were 4 years old, me and my sister, by the same person. And would you try to help me out and go to court? And we did. And we got him. He didn't go to jail or nothing. He did 2 years, less a day for me, 2 years, less a day for them. So he actually spent 1 day in jail.
But he was convicted.
He was convicted of all of us.
And when it was happening to you, did you know there were other people it was happening to?
One other person later on. But at that time, no. I thought I was the only one.
What do you do with the anger left over from that?
that anger went out of me many, many years ago. I just said, you know, God forgive me. And I looked at the drawer and I closed it.
But when you asked God to forgive you, you had done nothing wrong.
No, but I thought I did something wrong then.
Do you know now that you didn't?
I know now. I know now. It's hard, but like I try to say, I never want to be the person out there, because I have to show the other students out there and the other people that go through worse than me and went through, women and men go through a hell of a lot when they're kids, being molested and that. I can't let them worry about it anymore. I got to try to say to them, I know it hurts, I know it's there, but don't let them people win. I don't know, I just see people having harder times than me, and I got no reason.
Who did you see have a harder time than you, Arnie?
Well, we were in school one day, and I remember the teacher came in. It was a spare teacher, and she didn't know any of us kids. And she looked at me to ask me to get up to read, and then she looked over. There was a girl. Her name was Donna, and she said, "You, get up and read that." So Donna got up, and she couldn't read anything either. And she stood there, and the teacher said, "Read that sentence." And the poor little girl started peed herself, and all the kids started laughing. And I said, you know, I'll never read. I'll never stand up like poor Donna did, and you know.
You won't ever let anyone find out you can't read?
All my life, that's what I said. I'll bluff my way through. I always wanted to read. I mean, you know, that was like a gift from God that you could read. I always thought I was the only one, and I thought, well, I did something wrong in life, that I'm being punished by God for not reading and writing. You know, I don't know why.
How did it turn out that you were 15 at the end of grade 4? What happened there?
That's all I remember is every year I was at school, I was in each class for 3 years, whatever.
So did you fail at the end of each year?
Each year, yep. I failed every year because we just really they didn't get me what was wrong with me, because they were too busy with other kids, so we just stayed there. There was no other Donna, the rest of them, we just stayed there.
When they finally kicked you out of school, when you were 15, you didn't make it into grade 5, you went home, your dad gave you a tiny bit of money and pretty much showed you the door. What did you do?
When I first got down here to Niagara Falls, I had no place to go, and I had to sleep in a parked car right here on Victoria Avenue. And I stayed there for, I think it was close to 2 months.
In someone else's car?
It was a car lot. They had an old 51 or 52, 49 Dodge, big black, heavy seats in the back. But the guy knew, that owned the place, I was sleeping there. I was like a watchman at night.
And he let you
didn't
stay?
really care yet, because he knew I was having hard times. And there used to be a restaurant called the Red Barn. And all the kids used to get out of school and go there. So at nighttime of that, I'd go and get what I could to eat. There was people threw in chicken and that, especially kids. They didn't have the food. So
You mean you went through the garbage?
through the garbage, yeah, to get what I could. And I remember sleeping in that parked car. And one time the store was there, a big store, and there was a big hunk of cheese in that window. And I had a plan all made up where I was going to sneak behind the thing when it got dark and smash the window, grab the cheese and run with it. It's like a big mouse, I guess, in the cheese. But when you're hungry, you do strange things. But you know what? Being scared, I think it was the good Lord saying, don't do it. He must have saved me, because you know what? It was about a day or two after I walked up to this little place called the Red Barn. And I sat down beside these 2 little girls. And they had French fries. And I sat there, and one of them offered me a little bit of French fries. So I took the French fries. I went back, slept again in the car, and the next day I go, gee, I wonder if them kids are back there again. So I went back up there. And the 2 little girls was there again. So they said, oh, well, where do you live? So I had to explain, you know, I hitchhike and I sleeping in a parked car, and they go, oh my God, you know. They said, well, come on back tomorrow. So I come back, and here they had a brown bag. It was a bacon, tomato, and lettuce sandwich they snuck out of the house for me. And that girl that fed me, that was 40 years ago. She still feeds me to this day, little Barb. So, you know.
Little Barb, your wife?
Little Barb, my wife. She was the one, she was only about 14. And she fed me, and I guess we just fell in love. And she's been feeding me since.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 21, she was 19. We went out together for 6 years, I guess.
Did Barb, when you were young, try to teach you how to read?
No.
Why not?
I felt ashamed to ask my wife, you know, to teach me how to read and that. And she was always working. I was always working. I tried to work overtime. I worked 2 jobs at once, slinging beer in a hotel and getting up in the morning, running back to the Bridge Commission, getting off, going back. And it was just no time, no money.
Did she help you out, though, to try to do the reading for you?
She helped me. I used to, when I was acting for him, the boss was away a month or so, and I'd get stuff sent there and messages and stuff, and I'd read it, phone my wife up if she had time, and I'd spell the word to her, and then she'd tell me what it said, and then I know it.
Okay, so that is business.
Business. Okay, business.
What is it about not being able to read and write that feels so shameful? I don't mind admitting, many people don't mind admitting they can't do things. Why is it so hard to admit you can't read and write?
Because, you know, you get a job, and what your goal on your job is to work real hard, and someday you're going to be the foreman. You hope, because there's more money. I try to tell the kids, if I would have been foreman 30 years ago, if I would have been able to read and write, I would have been foreman. But because I couldn't read and write, I lost $2 an hour for 40 years, 40-hour a week. That's $300,000 gone.
How did it make you feel when you realized that not only were you not the only person who couldn't read, but that there were hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people who couldn't read?
In a way, I could say I felt good because I wasn't the only one. One time I got this car, and I was so proud of it here in Niagara Falls, which is a little old Volkswagen. But I said, oh, I'm going to go to Cobalt. I'm going to show them that I got a car. Now, how am I going to go from here with a car? I can't read the signs. I'm going to leave here, go through Hamilton, St. Catharines, Toronto. How do you do that? I can't do it. So I figured up a plan. So I said, well, I go by bus all the time. I'm going to take this car, and I'm going to get ready, wait for the bus to leave Niagara Falls, drive in behind the bus. And I did. I got in behind that bus, and I went up and down, follow the bus, and I hit 400 highway, and the bus really took off. Mm-hmm. And I'm left behind. I just couldn't keep up to the bus anymore. And I'm going down. I said, okay, go in there. And I know I'm going to come to number 11 highway. I'm on the 400. Just keep straight. And it was getting dark at night, about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And I see these signs. I don't know what the signs say. But I see this one sign, look back, and boom, I went right off the road down into the gully. Smashed into this culvert with the car, put my head in a big hole in the window. And everybody come running down the bank. So what happened? What happened? Did you go to sleep? I go, no. So well, didn't you read the sign? And I go, no. What did it say? It said, this lane ends. Oh. This lane ends. I went down. I could have killed people. Could have killed myself, you know.
How did you finally resolve to get help?
Before a lot of things happened, my wife used to go up north to see my mom and dad when I couldn't when I was working. I had 2 little kids at home. And I went shopping. I went and bought the meat and the vegetables and stuff like that. But I had things to do, so I had to come home and get something real fast to eat. And I remember looking at the cans, it was all black and white. And I remember seeing beef across it. So, okay, we'll have that for supper. So I ran home and I opened up the 2 cans of beef and stirred it up and we ate. The next day, my wife come home. And she went in the kitchen to take out the garbage. And she says, Arnie, who was over here? And I go, nobody was over here. She said, well, somebody was over here with the dogs. I go, dogs? She said, well, you got pure beef puppy chow. I couldn't read pure beef. I could read beef, but not puppy chow. We had 2 cans of dog food. It was just like stew. It was just as good. My daughter ate some. She barks a lot. I ate more. I bark a lot louder at her. We survived. It was okay.
But at some point you decided you didn't want to be feeding your kids dog food?
No. And safety and breathing fire things. The lady next door come across. She left me 2 or 3 messages on the door. Mm. And I was in here. And I got the messages, but I wouldn't answer them. And she come over the lady next door come over, and she said to me, what do you mean? Like, why didn't you answer my letters? What's wrong with you? Then I had to explain I couldn't read. Well, She knows 5 or 6 different languages. She's from England. She was from Europe, and she's a nurse in all them countries. And she said, well, go to school, learn to read. And I go, I tried. No one. She said, well, what do you mean? She said, there's a place called Lawback Literacy. They'll teach you how to read and write. And I go, oh, yeah, I'll go. I said that just more or less to get rid of her. She came back about a week later. She said, did you call them people up? And I go, no, I didn't. She picked up her cane, and she said, you go, or I'm coming back, and I'll hit you right over the head. And I figured, oh, my God.
And how old are you at this point?
Oh, I was 40.
You were 40?
I was 40 at this time.
And she was?
70, something like that. And I said, oh, my God, I better go learn to read and write, or she's going to come back, and she will hit me, because that's the way, the power she had. And that's when I went and I made the phone call. The best phone call I ever made in my life, to learn to read and write. But I was always scared, no matter who taught me or who tried to teach me, I could never read.
What was different about going into this program? Why were you able, you think, to make those first steps toward actually becoming literate?
The program, like, I didn't want to go to these other organizations that had 4 and 5 kids maybe to a class, or students like myself. That Each One Teach One program, nobody knew about it. It was like a secret where I could go and say, oh, could you help me? And they give me a tutor. And I would be just with the tutor. No one knew about it. They just don't teach you to read and write. They teach you how to feel better about yourself. They take the whole person and say it's okay. You know, learn how to not be fighting with that. They're not social workers or nothing, but they see the problems. They've been there. They've done that.
But once you started taking your tutoring, how quickly did you begin to make sense of the words?
Oh,
within months? Within weeks?
I'd say 6 months to a year. I got words. The littler words was harder to get than the big words. And I don't know why. Then the big words, someone told me, oh, just find a little word, or try to find 2 words in the big word, or a word in the big word. And all of a sudden, whew, I've been getting words. And I know it's comical. We go up north on vacation, and trucks go by, and signs, and I'm reading them to my wife. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. I'll get 1 or 2 wrong, but I get a lot of them now. Right. So I got the tutor. I never had a tutor for a long time. And I got a tutor back. I go, you know what? I really want to learn how to read again. And he said, well, what would you really like to learn? What would you like to read? And I go, well, the teachers always read every day a little story, and it was about Huckleberry Finn. I'd love to read that story someday. So he said, okay, Arnie, just finish your alphabets and that. We were in the library, and he said, I'll be right back. So he come back in about 10 minutes, and he threw this book down in front of me. He goes, that's Huckleberry Finn. So I'll be back in 6 weeks. I want you to read that book. And I go, I can never do that. He said, open the first page. He says, read this to me. So we read it together. I got a few words wrong. He says, I remember, 6 weeks, you read that book. So I go, oh. So I was at work, and I'd take out the book, and I wasn't busy, and I'd read a couple pages here and a couple pages there. And I remember I got to page 100, and I stopped, and I cried. I broke down. I said, never in my life I thought I would ever get 100 pages. And you know what? That book had 244 pages, and I finished it the next week. And that's a hell of a good feeling.
Is it difficult to admit you cannot read and write because, in many ways, it's the essential part of how we get along?
Not for me. Me, it was being afraid, being ashamed. People laugh at you. You know, even to this day. Like, you know, I could do this interview and that, and I know there's going to be somebody else. Oh, look at Arnie, he's stupid. Look at that. And I just got that feeling that happens, you know, but I don't care anymore. I just tell that as it is because I'm out trying to help the kids. I went and I wrote a letter to the school kids in Barrie, Ontario, and I asked them, like, I talked to them and stuff and told them about how not to fall through the cracks and try to help them out. And I made a mistake by asking one of them, I said, would someone be my pen pal? Well, about 50 kids said, yeah, I'll be your pen pal. So I come home and I go, oh, Barb, guess what? I got 50 pen pals. And she looked at me, oh, and you're going to write to each one of them. And I go, oh, you're going to help me? No, you said you'd be their pen pal. So that's about 7 months ago. And I wrote my first letter in my life to these kids at school. First letter. That was the proudest thing, writing to these kids, telling them how much, that because they wrote me 30, 40, 50 letters. And these letters I look at, they said, you know, Arnie, you changed our lives. I am really going to try the best I could do, honest to God, when I heard your story, I am going to try to really work hard to read and write. I think the worst thing in the world when I was young are people calling people stupid. And you know what? You call them stupid long enough, they go in a corner, and in their head they really think they are stupid. And it's so hard to get out of that.
And is that what happened to you?
I think it is, yes. Because I felt like a piece of dirt, thrown in a corner, treated with that pedophile like a piece of dirt. You just get... I have a brother. I heard people say, I won't say government people, but they said, self-esteem don't mean nothing. Well, you know something? I had a brother. My oldest brother couldn't read or write very well. And he knew I was in the literacy, and he was going to school to learn to read and write in a grade 2 or 3. And every time we went up, my wife and I went up north, he'd come, oh, look at this, I'm reading this now, and look what I got. I got these certificates. The Ontario Literacy Coalition up there had a school thing where they went in and they learned. He was there first thing in the morning. He paid the pot of tea, and he was so happy. And at Christmas time, he put these papers or certificates, 1, 2, 3, put down the Christmas tree. He found out he was going to die in 6 months or even earlier. And he got us all around the bed, sort of, and knew he was going to die. And he said to the family, put these certificates with me. I want these to go to heaven with me. You know, self-esteem is just about everything if you're willing to try. Like he felt so good about himself because he could read and write and stuff, and that means a lot to people. That's all I want to do in my life is say, I'm somebody too. You know, we're all human beings. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. I don't know. That's just the way it is, I guess.